Welcome in, 49ers faithful. First real video of the offseason. We are 49 Reasons to Listen. Juju Talk Sports, Jose Corral, 2 reasons right here. And there's been a lot of news stirred up in the first early goings of this offseason, Jose. There's been a lot of chatter on Niners Twitter. What is Niners Twitter talking about today, as of this video?
Well, they're mostly talking about a guy who we thought his career was over, a guy who announced his retirement just a few weeks ago, but just all of a sudden you're starting to hear some rumors. You're starting to hear some people talk about the possibility of the great Tom Brady potentially coming out of retirement and joining who else but his childhood team in the San Francisco 49ers. You know, first of all, these types of talks always kind of happen, right? Like, oh, Tom Brady's going to go here, he's going to go there. But now you're starting to hear it from a couple of people that are pretty close to the Brady camp saying that, hey, this might not be his last go around. Like he's really might actually consider down the road going into this offseason, might consider coming back into football. And the fact that there's that connection between, you know, him growing up in Northern California and the Niners being his, you know, childhood team, that's gotten a lot of other people to talk and other people around the Niners organization possibly saying, hey, maybe we have a chance at Tom Brady. But what do you think? Is it realistic, or is it just kind of, you know, one of these offseason headlines that just keep people talking?
I didn't think it was realistic out the gate. Initially, I just wanted to doubt it, but I was also doubting the thought of Brady even retiring, coming off a season in which he threw for 5,300 yards, led the league in passing, led the league in completions, had over 40 touchdowns. Tom Brady told me once that he would retire when he sucked. He did not suck in 2021. So it was a little jarring to see him retire coming off that loss to the Los Angeles Rams, the eventual Super Bowl champion Los Angeles Rams. I didn't think he would go out that way. I thought he would go out on a high note. And what's really starting to make me turn this corner is, as you mentioned, we're starting to hear it from people that have a little cachet to their name, people that have some blue check marks next to their name, not just Tom or Joe off the street, people that are no Boston sports specifically. Bill Simmons, obviously CEO of The Ringer, very popular sports podcast on YouTube. He's the one that's been stirring it up the most. He's been the one that's been at the forefront of he didn't think Brady was retired. And then there was the Boston radio host that came out and said he didn't think Brady was really retiring. And that today I saw a headline that really started to make me think about it. Tom Brady didn't retire because he thought he was done. Tom Brady retired because he was getting tired of Bruce Arians, which when I saw that, now I'm starting to really speculate. I'm starting to think, is it just he's done with the Bucks? And that's what Simmons is getting at, that his Instagram post said he sounded like he was done with the Bucks. And it makes sense. You know, they're going to lose some pieces. They obviously aren't going to have Antonio Brown back. Chris Godwin's probably going to leave in free agency. Mike Evans is really going to be the only guy there. Leonard Fournette, I imagine, will probably leave to get a better contract also in free agency. Probably not going to be able to keep that defense together in the same way they were, not to mention they were already starting to struggle on the back end of their secondary. So there was some flaws to be seen in the Bucs roster moving forward. And then it comes back to the Niners. What does he see with the Niners? He sees a team that up until 13 minutes in the NFC Championship game were on a pace to go to the Super Bowl. A team that was up in the NFC Championship game, a team that he idolized growing up. We've all seen the pictures. We've all seen little Tom Brady, little Thomas Edward Brady Jr. in his Joe Montana jersey. And then we'll talk about this too. I saw the Montana doc. So you see Tom Brady in the Montana doc talking about how he's at the last Joe Montana game in San Francisco, talking about how he was at the famous catch game. And you're like, man, this guy is still a fan of the 49ers. Why else is he doing this documentary? Why else is he showing up for Joe Montana? And then I said Joe Montana is just trying to get Tom Brady unretired out of spite with his Super Bowl comments that, you know, I don't know if we can really call Tom Brady the greatest of all time. I know it's blasphemous for me to say this on a Niners show. Yeah, Tom Brady's kind of the greatest of all time to ever pick up a football at this current juncture of time. Love Joe Montana. Love you, Joe. And if that's what you're trying to do, mad respect to you, bro. What about you? Where are you at with this? Like, if I had to give you the question of what percentage would you put on it happening, what would you say at this time?
At this time, I still see it under 50% of it actually happening. I'm still pretty convinced that he's gonna stay retired. We'll have to see when actually like the real off season starts, when the draft comes up, when maybe he starts missing the grind of having to get ready for a season. That's when we're really gonna know if he's gonna be itching to come back or not. Because right now, I mean, it's a kind of this kind of just lame duck part of the season where it's like, yeah, no one's really making any moves. There's really nothing going on in the off season. But once you
Yeah.
start into OTAs, into training camp.
Well, here's the thing, though. The Niners need to know now because they're moving off of Jimmy Garoppolo. So they kind of need to know before the draft, before they commit to Tom. And I think Tom would also kind of like to know that the Niners are doing what he would like to do during the draft to build the team accordingly. You look at when he first signed on with the Buccaneers, no coincidence that they immediately draft Tristan Wirfs and make the free agent acquisitions that Tom wants them to make. Think about a guy like Rob Gronkowski. Rob has tied his ship to Tom Brady staying retired or coming back to play. So I'm sure that as a good friend that Tom Brady is, he also wants to do right by a guy like Gronk and give him, I guess you could say, his forever home for 2022 before OTAs and things start getting really serious.
Right. But I mean, at that point, you're just asking Tom to be like, oh, I just announced my retirement 3 weeks ago, and here we are a month later, and I'm going to unretire. That just seems so much more unlikely. I wouldn't even be surprised if maybe down the road at the start of the 2022 season, he even decides to pick up the phone again to any organization who's looking for a quarterback and being like, hey, like, what's the situation like? I want to get back into football. And at that point, if the Niners, for some reason, something isn't working with Trey Lance, that's another really big aspect about this whole thing is we have this third overall pick who we traded away, picks to get and to bring into the building. And now this is going to be his first year as a full-time starter. And I mean, what do you really do if you're John Lynch? If you do pick up the phone and it's Tom and it said, hey, I'm ready to be a Niner. I'm ready to end my career as a Niner. What do? Do you just kind of say, hey, Trey, I know we promised you to be the starter this year. We got rid of Jimmy for you, but there's this other guy who's pretty good. We think he's pretty good. He's going to come in and you're going to have to sit on the bench again another year. That brings, I mean, that part of the aspect as well, which is a difficult one.
You can't put the genie back in the bottle with Trey Lance. I know we got to see him play a couple times last year, but you can't start the season with Trey Lance and then allow Tom Brady to come in. That's just not something that's even conceivable. I don't think Tom even wants to do that to a young guy. I know we think about Tom as this spiteful, just oligarch, just reigning over the entire league. But no, I don't think that he would do that to another player, do that to a young guy like Trey Lance, because I think he would prefer the Niners succeed. But again, I guess that would probably be the thing that makes this unlikely, would just be that it needs to happen now. It can't happen in May. It can't happen in June. It can't happen in July. It needs to happen before the draft. That's the only way I think it really happens. If they can make it happen before the draft, because then at that point, you still have the possibility to hypothetically trade Jimmy to the Bucs. That's a likely trade scenario that can happen. You can maybe trade Jimmy to the Bucs and trade them a second round pick. And if Trey has to sit another year behind Tom Brady, no harm, no foul, because Trey, you're sitting behind the greatest of all time quarterback. So you just kind of have to acquiesce. Jimmy did it for 4 years and he was fine. You can deal with it going into your third season. So you're behind Jimmy Garoppolo and Tom fucking Brady. You can deal with it, Trey. I know everyone on Twitter that's like, I would rather lose with Trey Lance than win with Tom Brady. Shut the fuck up. Honestly, just shut the fuck up.
No.
If you have the opportunity to get Tom Brady and you have the opportunity to win with Tom Brady and you have the opportunity to go on the quest for 6 with Tom Brady, you absolutely do that. That is a non-question in my book. That is a non-starter when it comes to discussion, saying no to Tom if he says, I'm down before the draft. If Tom says, I'm down in August or September, then I understand where you would be a little bit hesitant to pull that trigger if you're John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan. If I had to put my percentage on it, I would probably put it at somewhere 30%. So it's high. It's still pretty high, I think, considering the variables that play into this potential scenario. But I think the fact that it's a non-zero chance is why it's worthy of having this discussion. Anyway, guys, let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Leave a like on this video. And of course, subscribe to our channel because we're planning on pushing out more content because things are getting a little bit spicy on Niners Twitter. A lot of people are talking about things. It's not just Tom Brady. It's Trey Lance. It's A-Rod. It's Jimmy Garoppolo. It's all this quarterback carousel drama that we have to mesh through in addition to heading into the draft and free agency. So let us know your thoughts on Tom Brady. We will see you next time.